This panel is called Local Revolution. Oh, we lost one.
Sorry.
How disruption's creating a new era of measurement. And it's not just hype, it's happening right now. So today we're going to get into some big themes, how advanced audiences and personification are transforming planning, buying, and selling. How agencies and broadcasters are rebuilding their workflows. In a world where multiple currencies are the new normal, I think that's a big deal that's going on. There's no more alternative currencies, right? Everyone had to change. What's happening with ATSC 3.0, programmatic and personalized ad buying, and the explosion of sports in local, that's another big deal. And finally, I think confronting the challenges around data interoperability, like getting data in the places where we need it, and actually can compare it and use it. So we do have a bar in the back, but you'll have to earn your drinks. But our panelists, including myself, have secured our own, which we'll be consuming while we talk to you. So that said, I'm gonna let the team introduce themselves here. And let's get into it. You want to start, Robin?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Robin Cohen. I am the Director of Media Planning for RAIN, the growth agency. For those of you who don't know RAIN, we are a full-service media planning, buying, creative, brand strategy, production, and measurement agency. I've been at the agency for about 13 years. Prior to that, I worked at WPP in New York at various Group M agencies. This is one of my favorite topics. I started my career actually as the local planner for American Express, which was so much fun. I loved it and was a huge part of my kind of growth trajectory within Group M. I think you wanted us to kind of speak to a fun fact about us.
Yes, let it rip.
I don't know if it's a fun fact. A fact about me, I grew up in Massachusetts in the Boston area. I love all things Boston sports. If there are any Boston sports fans here, maybe not. Yay, I found one. We're going to be talking about local sports. So that seemed appropriate. I'm also a Florida Gators fan. Go Gators.
Yeah, me too.
Excellent. There you go.
Go Gators.
Yeah, I'm excited about all of the topics today, and I will hand it off.
Great, thanks. I'm John Brauer. I'm the SVP of Insights and Media Measurement at Fox Television Stations. That's the owned and operated stations for Fox. I just celebrated my 1-year anniversary in the job yesterday, so it's been a year. Thank you.
Seems longer, doesn't it?
No, it's gone by. It's been a lot of fun. But the prior to that, I worked in local ad sales at Comcast, and prior to that, worked at Amazon, Vivo, various streaming players, and really have focused my career on how do we take measurement and insights and some of the capabilities that came from the digital native and streaming platforms and bring that to video more holistically. And it's been a fun first year with Fox setting that up, and I'm sure we'll get into some stories about where we've been.
Right on.
Okay, I did start my career at Nielsen, actually. I worked at Nielsen Online in their online division, focusing on, again, innovation of combinations of multiple products, including some of the first cross-platform measurement from a single source panel, which was unique. It was like me and one guy in a room hacking. Lots of fun. A fun fact about me, prior to getting into media analytics, I was a professional musician. I was a singer.
Sweet.
And it was fun, but I like this better. But I still play, and just this past weekend I was at a bluegrass jam in a hotel in New Jersey. So that's how I spend my free time.
Very good.
Where all bluegrass jams are.
Yeah, randomly.
Yeah.
Northern New Jersey. Who knew?
So I'm Paul Cavalluzzi. I have spent my career about a dozen or so years with Publicis Media in various agency roles, starting in digital planning and operations and into research and cross-platform research. I took a little bit of a break in between. I was at Viacom on the corporate cross-platform research team there. And then I came back to the now centralized Publicis Media I lead the marketplace intelligence arm of the data intelligence team, also known as research. I am originally born in the Bronx, so I'm the opposite of a Boston sports fan. But I'm drinking a Stella to bring a little bit to balance the Bronx out a little.
Aaron Mikes.
Yep.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jeff Hassan. I actually work at the EW Scripps company. Been there a lifetime, about 18 years. I've held various roles at the company, and my history with media goes back to the days of my grandfather being involved with WOHIO, and actually early days of radio, early days of broadcast, and enjoying and watching broadcast as a child, grow up through it, a little bit in the industry, but decided at some point to make it my home. Scripps has been very graceful to me and allotted me a lot of opportunity to grow in the space of not only data, but intelligence, and also the way that we use the currencies and all of the ingest of data that drives and powers our business. You'll hear me use certain terms today, like sometimes we may over-science the data, sometimes we may take too much liberty with the data, but at the end of the day, we have to deliver something back to our customer, be it the agency, be it the buy side, be it the advertiser, something that is meaningful, storytelling, and drives them to continue to want to spend their budget with us on a local level, at a broadcast level. That's why I'm here. That's what I love to do. Spent my life in tech. That's where I cut my teeth. I am probably not the right person to be on this stage talking about the level of detail in data. I've got two colleagues here that work in this minutia day in and day out. Dan Buemi and Jessica Nielsen, it's good to see you. And an old colleague, Tom Sly, here that I have to give a shout out to. And I see Lynn way in the back there, but Boston surprises me.
Yeah.
So my interesting fact is, how does a Tennessee girl become a Boston fan?
My son's at BU.
Oh, there you go.
In Boston, we go to games, and one game, and they win you over.
There you go.
All right.
So interesting fact, I'm a proud Kentuckian, born and raised, still live there. I've ridden a bull. Maybe that's something, I don't know, caused some head injuries. But other than that, pretty good.
All right, so let's get into it. I want to start by talking about how agencies and broadcasters are actually managing the disruption in measurement today, not in the abstract, but within the systems, teams, and structures that you all lead. So let's start with Paul. You work at Publicis. This is a massive organization, global clients, complex structures, planning and buying offered and planned in different teams. You've got legacy linear, digital transformation, and procurement all colliding with the rise of multiple currencies. How are you navigating this shift internally across the systems, talents, and process, and what do you see as the biggest opportunities for disruption?
Yeah, so it's been a lot of parallel paths. It started as multi-currency, but really it's, the North Star of what that vision was developing a cross-platform, campaign-based optimization tool, not just currency specifically, but changing what that looks like if we could go from the bottom up. We're still doing that. We've realized that's one parallel path. The other parallel path is then the multi-currency path we've been talking about, which is essentially selecting the measurement vendors who fit in there. So the great part about the disaggregation of measurement over the last few years, even though it's been a ton more work, is understanding how those pieces fit into that North Star of a cross-platform solution.
Yeah, and I just want to thank Paul for being one of the few planners I know that love working in local. Like, we didn't have to convince him to do that. It's part of his passion. And I hope that we can find more folks that have the diligence like you do for the craft that help us unlock how we're going to move to these currencies. Let's go to you, Robin. So you work at Rain. It's a totally different kind of agency, independent, performance-driven, built for nimbleness. But you don't have to navigate the holding company bureaucracy, right? But you're balancing strategy, planning, and execution. How are you managing the shift inside Rain, and what solutions have you built to bring on Comscore as a way of transacting with clients?
Yeah, it's a good question. So from my perspective, at the end of the day, it's about what works for our clients. We are fiduciaries for them, and it's our job to be on top of the marketplace and understanding what are all of the changes coming. We as an agency have taken on a lot of local business in the past 3 years, and that's why we started to partner with Comscore to learn more about the capabilities of Comscore's measurement, But as a performance-based agency, we look at all metrics. So we're looking at presence of audience, and we're looking at like broad audiences and advanced audiences, but we are also looking at marketing mix data. We are looking at some probabilistic models. And so, our job is basically, as an independent agency, is to pick the right solutions for our clients, and Comscore has been a great partner for us in local.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So Jeff, Scripps is a publicly traded company, but it's got deep roots in journalism, right? 140 years of it. And you've been leading the operational innovation across all of those markets. I was fortunate enough to do that with you. We worked together to get Comscore put into the ecosystem. And it wasn't simple, right? There were corporate leaders, GMs, and local sales teams that all needed to be aligned. And you managed that like a pro. So give us a real-time snapshot. What's happening inside of Scripps right now? And I know you've got newsroom consolidations, you have sports rights coming to bear. How are you operationalizing all of that and changing it at scale?
Wow, that's a big question. So yes, Frank was the catalyst of a really big and monumental shift inside of Scripps when we decided to go all in on Comscore. And let me tell you, this panel knows, and I've used this term, I've taken shrapnel from Frank, and that's okay, because I am, beyond anything else, an advocate of disruption. Disruption without destroying. Disruption without deprecating what you have to sustain so that you have solid revenue growth, that you have solid sustainability of existing revenue, but also going after new business, new horizons, new business opportunity. In being an advocate for disruption, it also has to balance with just operating and running the business. And if you take your eye off of that prize, it is really detrimental to the organization. So you want the individuals that are going to drive change, be a catalyst, understand what could potentially happen operationally, but what the impact is on those end users, those groups like our research group, those groups like our revenue group, those groups like our data intelligence and insights group. The amount of work that they spend engineering their processes, engineering their outputs, engineering their day-to-day behaviors changed significantly because of one catalyst change of moving to a new currency. Wasn't easy. I do say it was monumental. It was a lot of work, fair. And it actually put a lot of attention on the people that needed it most. And those are the individuals that actually drive the day-to-day business of how we use Comscore across the company.
Yeah, really good. Let's go to John. John, you're leading measurement inside of one of the most influential owned and operated station groups with streaming, sports, and affiliate disruption. The old playbook just doesn't cut it anymore. What are the most meaningful shifts happening right now across Fox's local operations? And what strategies have you put in place to drive innovation while keeping your teams aligned?
That's a great question. So again, I'm 1 year in, and one of the reasons that I joined Fox was I saw the commitment to playing the new game. We know that we need to put our live local news and local content in front of people where we need to meet them where they want to watch us. So the company, before I didn't start this, but in the last 2 years, our commitment to finding those people where they want to watch has more than doubled the amount of viewership that we get from streaming, and it's a growing component of how we actually reach audiences. So where we're looking to innovate is actually focusing on how do we drive analytics into the audience to drive intelligence for both our content creation, to make sure we're engaging audiences and bringing in new audiences, as well as our advertising business, ensuring that we have the right way of characterizing our audiences and telling stories and engaging with advertisers, working with them to partner to find the most effective ways of reaching their target audiences by combining our traditional broadcast ad product with the new and growing streaming audience.
So I hope you get the sense that these folks on stage, they're actually doing the change that's happening in the disruption as we're enduring it. And I think that's a big distinction from many of the panels that you might sit and listen to. We have to work together to embrace change and not be afraid of disruption. Let's get into the next segment, which is moving away from age 6 demos. Everyone's always talked about this as something that we need to do, and it seems like it just falls through our fingers, right? Every single year we talk about it, but it doesn't actually happen. So, so Jeff, there's real momentum building around moving beyond these regular H6 demos. You got ATSC 3.0, Run 3 TV, a new currency that could be evolving, and this new EdgeBeam consortium, which you guys launched with many of the other broadcasters here at NAB just yesterday. How is Scripps breaking away from legacy demo-based selling? And how do these innovations help us look towards the future?
Yeah, I would say cautiously optimistic in how we're breaking away until the entirety of the industry changes from the age and the way that we have adopted and used the data over the course of decades. So you have to have, I'll say, a surge, a wave that is almost like something that's a 10-foot wave that crashes and really breaks down. You can see that it's disruptive, but you also have the ripple waves. And I see the old methods of measurement, the old methods of the data that we all base our business on as something that is going to have to be challenged, broken down, but it's going to take, a horrible term, cohesiveness across everybody that's in the ecosystem in the media space, and being fair and friendly and talking to one another about the impacts of those changes.
Yeah.
New currencies, new sets of data, the way that we actually use and reach into first party with our product Tableau, the way that ATS3 is bringing forward a new potential data set. It is all things that you want to lean into, use, find pocket use cases and build off of that instead of maybe just saying we're all in, right? The Comscore decision was an all-in decision.
Sure.
It felt very difficult. It felt tough. We braced our clients for it. We braced ourselves for it. We could not do predictive analytics on what the changes were going to do for us or against us. It's been positive, and Comscore has been a great partner. But I just see the layering of data and specifically breaking down the new demographics of how we want to measure as simple as trying to define how are people thinking about co-viewing in a household, multi-viewing in a household. Like how much time and effort's being put into that space, because it's happening at a monumental level. And we all know it on this panel, but we're not getting the data yet.
Right. John, let's go to you. Advertisers want more than age, gender targeting. How are you pushing beyond these metrics at Fox, and how are you using Comscore to create higher yield and outcome-based selling?
Yeah, so I think our focus as we've been growing our streaming audience is engaging more and more advertisers who are accustomed to the capabilities that you get within streaming, advanced audiences, outcome measurement, all the goods that come in streaming. And as we engage with those advertisers, it's been helpful to engage in conversations around Comscore's advanced audiences to ensure that those advertisers who have defined those segments are able to measure our media the same way they would across the other areas where they're activating that segment. And those segments tend to be based on either a predicted customer or actual customer response, which is a great way for us to drive the partnership and again bring those great capabilities that we have in the streaming space to the whole product that we have. Because for us, one of the strengths that we have in the market is no matter where people want to watch, we are there. So we are on every MVPD, we're over the air, we're on every vMVPD, we have our streaming services. So again, if you want to reach folks, our content draws them in, and we're a great partner to do that.
Nice. Robin, Rain's used Comscore to build a performance practice that's helping build clients in local. How are you shifting the conversation from demos to outcomes, and what's resonating the most with your clients?
Yeah. I need to say, like, it's still a journey for us because we're in year one. And I think a big part, I think it kind of holds true. There's a learning of what it looks like to move to a new currency and how that's going to translate for different clients with different demos and different objectives. We really think of marketing as full funnel. And so the presence of audience being the top of the funnel is we need to make sure we're clear on who we're reaching. And I think my team every day is learning about new data that we have within, our Comscore subscription to continue to refine how we think about targeting. But ultimately, we want to make sure that the targeting we're putting in market has a measurement plan that ties to an outcome that is the client's, true north. And many times that could be a website conversion, that could be an app download, that could be going to store. And so we really focus on conversations across that whole ecosystem, starting with audience all the way down to conversion. And I would say like I said, we're still learning. We're still kind of refining. It is hard to bring on a new currency and to figure out what those translations should look like. And our team is pretty much on the phone with your team, I think, on the
All the
daily-ish.
Yes.
It's really, I very much agree, it's a partnership. I don't think any one of us have it completely locked down because the media is evolving, the measurement is evolving, but you need to be curious, you need to be courageous, you need to not rely on something that's legacy, and I too have an amazing team of people that do a lot of that detail work, and I'm very proud of that too.
Wow, speaking my language here. So let's go to Paul. Let's talk planning. So we've been working with you to develop some new tools that translate advanced audience data at scale down to markets. How are you making this actionable inside a holding company environment? And what breakthroughs are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, to echo the panel a little bit, when we talk currency, we're talking a lot beyond, just a reach frequency metric for a transaction. We're talking about a whole system of processes and teams that have to learn new norms, right? Everything from forecasting, stewarding, posting, and a lot of the work we've done together with Comscore in the last year to understanding the translation of households with to personification in local markets was huge in getting to know that. And then, Frank, to your point, now understanding what that looks like in a planning resource. And in planning specifically, there's a huge need across the board, but specifically in planning for consistency, how teams are expecting to create a plan, how what's available to them, all of the nuts and bolts of this is how I'm used to planning a campaign. How does that change now from the state of the data, but also the availability of the data? And then what are those new norms going to mean for the marketplace? That different currencies are going to have different viewing levels, down to the granularity of a network or day part. What does that mean for your strategy by market or across markets? I think some of the really interesting breakthrough moments have been, just the vastness of what's available to you, even in local media planning. And really, the big unlock in my view too, is not looking at that in just a local media context or just a market by market context, but what that impact is, local to multiple markets or to national. Really is a huge unlock for how we understand how we operate locally, and we have a number of brands that operate that have both the national brand and local franchisees or dealers. So those are huge pieces for us to understand and just sort of level set what measurement starts to look at. I don't really talk about multi-currency as much when I talk to teams. I call it multi-solution. It's like, what's going to be the piece that fits your client? I think, we've said it already, every client's going to have a different KPI of what that means and what kind of media that entails. So just making sure that we're doing our best to do our due diligence of making what's available and the best fit work.
All right. So let's get into this next segment, which to me, I think is probably the thorniest and most important to discuss as far as barriers of getting currencies changed, and that's workflow. I lived this. I lived it at Scripps. I lived it at Publicis. We pushed boulders up the hill every day, right? We did it with our comrades right behind us, right, Tom? And it was about scalable workflows that could support the innovation and the change. It's not easy to do. And as I left the agency world and I've now come over to Comscore, getting back connected with my agency friends, it really hasn't moved forward as much as I had hoped, right? So we have to continue this. But I'm going to say this one thing because many of my panelists can't because they're under restrictive agreements with their other data provider. Agencies, broadcasters, and advertisers must demand interoperable solutions. If we can't move the data freely across the systems, if we can't compare and translate, validate it side by side, then we're stuck. And I believe we have been. So we have to plug and play into these planning systems and work with fluidity and flexibility. That is the key. It's not a nice to have. It's the cost of entry for the next era of measurement. there was a really interesting conference that happened today in New York. The Coalition of Innovative Media Measurement, CIM, had a panel discussion in the morning. And Nicholas Grand, who's the executive director of Group M, was on that panel and was asked, what's the biggest barrier? And he said, frankly, it's the Nielsen contract that just gave me headaches when I negotiated and signed it. And the fact that we cannot move data together with other data points. And he challenged everyone in the room who was listening to ask Nielsen, what are you afraid of? Like, why don't you let us do this? If we know that alternative currencies are now not the norm, everyone had to change, then let's just be honest and bring it all together. So I thought that was really, first of all, an in-your-face comment that I fully support, but I think also it recognizes that we're in an industry where data has to be interoperable. If we can't move it, then we won't move, right? So we have to support that. So I'm going to pass it to Jeff here. You're deep in the legacy systems like White Orbit, and you're also thinking about the next generation of platforms. How are you keeping the trains running while we build this new future? What's working and what's breaking?
So that, I would say that in the legacy realm of the core media buying and selling platforms, there's still a lot to be desired. I think I would use the word desire because the reality is it takes investment, it takes time, talent, and treasure, and a significant investment to move legacy platforms into a modern application status or a modern technology framework that will achieve interoperability.
Yes.
Terms like interoperability have been around a long time. They have worked in some industries well, but in the media industry, if somebody can tell me it's worked pretty swimmingly well, raise your hand. I really need to talk to you. But in lieu of that, in lieu of these barriers of just doing our work, doing our surviving the day work, as I call it, we still do that. We still survive the day. We move the needle in areas where we want to work outside of the platforms that have potentially been barriers for us doing work and getting things done. We built an entire platform that just allows us to automate certain areas. We built a platform to deliver our own elements of attribution. We did that ourselves. We've done it with partners. I would say pushing the envelope and even working outside of the legacy media giants, if you want to call them that, has given us the ability to prove to them that you're necessary for a couple of these things, but you're not entirely necessary for the continuum of us operating our business. Causes disruption, causes a lot of heartburn, and I'm certain that people are out to poison me for doing that. So.
Well, I really appreciate your collaborative spirit, Jeff, because we were able to do some amazing things that, frankly, most people thought we were absolutely bonkers to try. Yeah. Did you want to say something about that?
No, I was just saying. Yes, they did think we were bonkers. They probably still do.
Yes.
But we have proof, and we have data to prove that. Is it always right? Is it always accurate? No. Does it take a certain level of detailed intelligence and understanding? Yes. And does it take a way to extrapolate it out so it's meaningful to individuals that don't want to go down into the level of detail? Yes. But yeah, we definitely had a lot of individuals questioning the decision, the why are we now where we are, and kind of, I don't think it was ever second guessing, but it's like a moment of, I can't believe you actually pulled this off.
Yes.
So.
Nice. So Paul, Publicis is showing what real transformation looks like. You guys have created an entirely AI-driven data platform that includes a lot of planning features, huge data sets, securely commingled with ROI output in real time. Tell us how that came together and what it tells us about where workflows are headed.
Yeah, so we think of it as sort of that AI is the next layer of iteration with our transformation as a whole. So I guess you could consider the first wave the folding together of services. So a lot of services across all of our various agency groups are folded into the Publicis Center. So every account, every client, regardless the agency it's with or the size, was getting the same representation. That quickly grew into products. So we had a bunch of great products for planning, optimizing, everything in between. That existed across our agency groups. That all folded together into one huge data lake that operates off of what we call the the Publicis OS. The name changes, and the AI is basically the next layer on top of that as an independent agent plugging into those, basically the full campaign lifecycle that is the OS. I was thinking about, especially here where every other billboard is AI based. The first time I was asked in sort of the brainstormy sessions of what this AI transformation would look like is, they came to us and they'd say, how could we use AI to transform the way, your team goes about work? And I said, I don't know what that means. And they said, well, imagine you had unlimited hours. Imagine you had something that could work behind the scenes. What would you want it to solve for? And that was really eye-opening. And the bits that have been folded into Publicis AI now, they really unlock a lot of really cool things. And a lot of that starts with things we know. So creating personas, activating against those personas, optimizing, doing a post-analysis. A lot of that is already in the works when it comes to developing an AI function to it. I think what's really interesting, personally anyway, as like the next wave of what that looks like is when AI starts to unlock things we don't know. So right now it's optimizing the services and taking the time and doing a lot of the nitty-gritty grunt work, which is part of the job too. But it's also opens up a lot of opportunities to see patterns that maybe we haven't seen and change ways we work.
Robin, how are you guys using AI in your agency?
Yeah, so one of the main ways we're using it now actually speaks to the concept of advanced targeting and the pros and cons of broad audiences and advanced targeting. And in particular in streaming, we have had a journey where we started off with a lot of broad targeting. We kind of shifted to a lot of programmatic advanced audiences. And now we really focus on quality inventory as being kind of the backbone of our CTV practice. And then we leverage custom algorithms that basically are set to the client's, it can be the client's KPI, it could be anything from if in local markets we have a retail-based client and they have product that they need to get off shelves in 4 markets, we can set the algorithm to basically find people in those markets in real time. So I would say that's probably the most exciting way that we're using AI right now, is like really innovating in the CTV space. And even though those campaigns are set to be national campaigns with national objectives, they end up being really hyper-local. The other piece I would say is that like really resonates with me is trying to find ways to replace the busy work to free up the team's time to do the strategic work. So, my team, media planning, we do a lot of data analysis and a lot of, performance optimization work, and starting to use AI to take some of the, kind of the discovery phase of that into play. But it's definitely early days.
But you don't see a time when there's no humans on the keyboards, right?
Definitely not. I think it's like in my ideal state, it is literally just replacing the busy work. And I do think it's also like bubbling up the things that human eyes can't see. So, if we are doing plans across, let's say it's 80 markets, you can only imagine what it's like for my media planners to be digging through 80 markets worth of data. How amazing would it be if the AI just like unearthed some of those insights that humans, it takes a lot of time to create those analyses, but I definitely see the need for the mind and the strategic imperative to still be a part of that.
I do think that the big unlock with generative AI capabilities, particularly that every time you talk about like this, it's not multi-currency, it's something else. I'm thinking like it's kind of like jumping through different multiverses, and as an individual having AI assistance to help you through some of the complexity that comes from that major type of context switch that can come if you're working with a particular advertiser that needs a certain type of metric, and then the next call you're on, you're in a completely different game. You can have the human drive, really the sort of intuition and insight, while the tools can be built from the ground up with some Gen AI or AI assistant type capabilities that just help focus, not to mention reducing busy work.
I mean, I know we care about media, but Paul, is it going into the creative agencies too? Like it's transforming how content's created. Does that provide a quicker way to the client presentations, or what? How are you seeing that impact?
Yes, is the short answer, I guess. The biggest unlock I think I've, at least tangentially seen so far, creative-wise, is just versioning and what that means and different formatting and, the hard work of coming up with the creative versus the work, the busier work of establishing like this is the sizing, this is the format it needs to be for various platforms. That's kind of where the AI bits came in pretty quick.
So I hope you guys appreciate the real examples that we're giving here and the disruption. As we think about what comes in the next 2-3 years, why don't you each talk about where you sit and where you think the business is going with the parts that you manage, and predict out what does it look like in a couple of years from now. You want to start, Robin?
So, not just because this is the panel that I'm on right now, but one of the things I didn't mention is incrementality testing. So part of why we're doing so much local as an agency is that it's one of the most unique ecosystems to actually learn from. And going back to my roots, working at American Express as a media planner, we used to do all of this local testing. You used to be able to cut out, does anybody remember that? You could cut out a part of the US and just test. And I actually feel like we're back there again. And I think that's really exciting. So when a client says, I really want to understand the incrementality of CTV, the incrementality of TV, local is actually a great place to do that. So I guess, AI, we already talked a lot about, that would have been the other one, but I actually see more and more brands that are national going local for lots of reasons, and that being one of them.
That's encouraging, especially as we're here at NAB. How about you, John?
So I think the next 3 years, we're only going to see more of a need to engage audiences through streaming. I feel like a bit of a broken record here, but Gen Z has different expectations, and in my position, I both work on the ad sales side and the content creation side. And we really need to think about how we're creating and distributing content and labeling content and creating algorithmically discoverable experiences for our users. So that's a major area of focus in terms of how we have to transform the way we think as a business. All of that has to be grounded in analytics, and that's my major focus is identifying the data sets, plural, that allow us to understand those different touch points that we have with consumers and creating an analytics platform that can pull the insights together that allow us to understand our audience and make those choices.
Nice. How about you, Paul?
Yeah, I think to answer the measurement piece, maybe this is a 5-10 year plan thing, outlook. We have to understand where media is going, where consumers are consuming media, right? And even in the last few years, right, the huge disassembly of what television looks like, and digital players looking a little more linear players looking a little more digital. I feel like every time I try to, as an anecdote, to get into the presence of CTV nowadays, I try to talk about how far we've come. I mean, what streaming was before. That one weird Netflix original that maybe a couple people watch, to now it's Disney, Fox, it looks like TV, right? And it looks like that to the viewer. So my hope in the next few years is that as those methods of access, as those points of distribution, even ownership change, a lot of those sort of structures we made for ourselves to define what are the one or the other kind of start to fall away. And I think to everyone's point here, that would make the measurement piece and the optimizing the experience piece the best for the viewer too. I mean, we think about television or just consuming media today. There are very few touch points remaining where you're making the decision, where there's not something being served to you, or an algorithm choosing what should be shown to you next. So it's a really interesting sort of melding of worlds. And it's, again, back to bring it back to the parallel paths, it's how we take that age, gender, linear journey, and then how we keep getting closer to that cross-platform optimization.
And this is maybe a little even crazy, but just think about how does AI factor into how people choose media? So can I have my own agent who looks at all the algorithms that have made suggestions and make it so it's even a shorter path to getting precisely what an individual wants? And that's where, again, like we need to be focused on that individual level analysis to drive our business decisions.
Nice. How about you, Jeff?
So everything in consumption is individualism, is it not? We would all agree with that. And each of you have different consumption habits. But imagine the divide in generational consumption habits. And if I had like a Pollyanna moment, it would be, I sat on an AI panel and I said, I want AI to solve a global issue. I want it to solve something big. Well, for me, in the media space, it's the generational gap shrinking as to how you get to a captive audience that has no desire to watch what we're publishing today. Or it isn't curated for them. Or it isn't in an algorithmic state that makes sense for it to be served to them. So bring it back to a way that it can be individualism, but that you're stretching and moving into generational habits and generational consumption needs where they are. We've heard it a couple times. Meet your client, meet your customer, meet your viewer, meet your consumer where they are. I think it is a ways off, but we're not listening enough. Or maybe we're listening, but we're not putting solidified and measurable ways to address the generational divide. I had a lengthy conversation with members of our revenue group and also our local media group, local media operations, about what it means to bring in audiences and in those younger generations. And you have to think about what will entice them, what will incent them, why would they want to lean into the experience. It's very, very interesting, but I got out of predictive analytics probably about 6 years ago, and it's a little worrisome that sometimes the AI and the prediction never comes to fruition.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this group gives me hope. I think not because we have it all figured out, but because we're doing the real work. You guys gave some fantastic examples of that. We're making the hard decisions and breaking the old systems and building something better together. So I think we have a few minutes left if anyone had any questions out in the audience. Mr. Sly, there's a mic.
So Robin and John, you talked a little bit about CTV, the moving away from age demo, and so in the planning process today, where does CTV fit into the cycle? As you're focused, like Robin, I think you talked a lot about outcomes. Are you starting with CTV because it's more measurable and it's more easy to measure return on ad spend and outcomes? And then does regular linear TV layer on top, or where are you today in that for your planning cycle?
That's a good question. Honestly, it varies by client. So we start with audience insights. So let's pretend it's a net new client, has no historical data, right? A lot of it comes down to generational. We've had clients that are targeting 18 to 24-year-olds. It's probably going to be a streaming dominant plan. And when we say CTV or streaming, we're including YouTube TV in that definition. We're targeting an older audience. We tend to see linear kind of leading, but with that said, it really varies by audience. So what we do is we go through our planning process, we look at all of the audience insights that we have, we look at all of the historical data, and we build that plan together. And then we look at TV in total. At the end of the day, it's TV, right? It's all on the big screen, whether or not you're accessing it through linear, you're accessing it through CTV. So we look at, we have tools like iSpot is a partner of ours as well, and we are able to look at what is the overlap and the duplication between those channels. So if we are using a mix of linear and streaming, how do we make sure we're not over frequencing the same audience by being in the same places? So I hope that answers your question, but it's not like we start with some pre-decided mix that we say for every client it's going to start with 70%, 30%. It really is unique by client.
Really good.
And do you envision a day where, sorry, I'm hogging the microphone, I'll hand it from here. Do you envision a day where it's all impression-based? We're moving away from HDemo, it's truly just impression-based, and perhaps impressions with data and targeting similar to CTV when the technology exists. So imagine linear TV that had the same capability of CTV. Wouldn't that be a beautiful world?
We actually think of it a little bit on the flip. Like, wouldn't it be amazing if CTV had the beauty of linear, right? If I buy linear, I can buy a program. I can know exactly what content and context I'm running advertising in, and I'm buying linear and buying streaming. I actually lose some of that. So we think of a world where it's kind of a mix of both, and that's why when we're using CTV, we're actually digging into a lot of that show level data. Those custom algorithms we're using as a way to also understand the wheres and the whats. So I would say not for us. We don't see a world where we're just buying impressions. We see more of a world where we're buying content.
What do you think about that, Paul?
Yeah.
So to start, I think it's the same answer that it depends.
Yeah.
I don't think
I love
there's
that, right?
set allocations.
Yeah.
I think it's super dependent on the client and their goal, and even what type of campaign it is. I think there is. I think impression based is the future. I think we're doing sort of bits and pieces within the whole code to make sense of it. For now, we have products internally that partner first party data to balance out the frequency of linear when it is a linear campaign, to reserve lighter viewers on CTV. So that's where we're trying to go. That's the ideal state. Is it just is TV, and we're not really thinking about the allocations. But then, to your point, it's still the structure we're in now.
At the end of the day, it's outcomes, really, right?
Yeah,
Outcomes
absolutely.
first, right? Who's next?
I really like those questions.
Anybody else have a question? All right. So, all right. So, as we finish up the panel at Comscore, we got some breaking news today that I can share. So today we were awarded MRC accreditation for local markets. And I'm really excited about that. As a person who sat on the MRC TV committee and endured the multiple 4-hour and 5-hour meetings, I can appreciate the rigor that's required to get that designation. And we worked really hard. It took a long time to get there. And for us to see that today, I think it's the gold standard for local. We want to win in this space. We care deeply about the audiences that are represented in our currency. And obviously you can see from the passion of the panel discussion we had today, it's really engaging with our agency and sellers. So on the buy and the sell side, we're bringing those together. The next piece of news is we were chosen to work with Aquila to build the next generation of panels through the ANA-funded approach with the clients. And we're an excited partner to be feeding the television data into that. I think they've already passed 1,000 units and are well on their way to building a next generation that's really supported by the clients. Like, this is something new. It's not being driven by anyone else but the folks that actually have the money to spend. So I think we're looking forward to the next pathways there. And then we also announced a partnership with Hyphametrics to build a set of panels that are device-driven. Will be able to give us those signals across all devices in the household. We'll mirror those up with our total home panel, the digital panel, and try to build, hopefully, the next generation of how we measure. So all of these pieces speak to, I think there's not one size that fits all, that we need to be flexible and interoperable with our data, but also that we need to understand the consumer's constantly changing. We need to build the tools that help our agencies and sellers help their clients monetize. And that's really what we're about. And that's how the disruption, I believe, can be a positive, not a negative. So I really appreciate this incredible group of panelists. It was really fun spending the time going through all these questions. We had as much fun trying to figure out what we were going to ask each other as doing it in front of you today. So the bar is open in the back. I encourage you guys to come up and have a chat with some of these folks. They love this. Like, this is not a chore to do this. You can clearly see that. And we want to interact with you and spend some time together. So thank you.